Okay, let's have a look at objects. Objects are just containers that can store key and value pairs. If you've done any Python programming in the past, you may have seen these called dictionaries. They're similar in some ways, but they're not actually the same. There's advantages and disadvantages to both of them. But in JavaScript, we have what are called objects. So the way that we make an object, and I won't go into too much detail with what they are right now, let's just get on with making some and playing with them. So the way that we make an object is we can save it into a variable. So we can say const my object equals, and then we literally just use curly brackets. And that will make an object, and it saves it into the my object variable. Great, there we go. That's how you make objects. Let's make something a little bit more interesting though. So let's make a car variable that holds an amount of data. So what we're going to do is we're going to say const car equals curly brackets, and then I'm just going to hit return here. And what that does is it just formats this nicely for us. So what I'll say here is the brand of car is a Ford. So what I've done is I've thought of a name to use as the key. I've then added a colon straight after it. And then I've put some data in that. So it's a little bit like, if you imagine, this object almost has a bunch of variables inside it. The object itself is a variable, but we're kind of saving data inside it. Now, we can save loads of different data types. Any of the data types that we've already learned about, we can save as values to our keys. So I've saved a string here. Let's now go ahead and save a number, for example. So let's add a comma after that. That's how we add another value. So we'll say top speed is, I don't know, 120 miles an hour, 120 kilometers an hour. I don't know. I'm not really a car guy. Now you see what I've done here is I've put all of the keys and values on one line. Now this is perfectly valid JavaScript, but if you've got an object that maybe has 100 or 200 keys inside it, it's going to get difficult to read. So it's good practice to put every single one on a different line. Great, so there we've added a string and a number. Well, let's go ahead and add a Boolean. So let's say if this is a manual car or stick shift, if you're watching this in the USA. So we can say is manual, and yeah, it is true. We can hold true or false values in our objects. So let's go ahead and add the colours of our car. Well, this has multiple values, so we'll make an array using the square brackets. And let's just say that we have red and blue. Maybe you've got a bit of a clown car, so it's red and blue. So you'll notice that you do not need to put the trailing comma at the end of the last value that you have here. Now, some people decide that they're going to put it on anyway, and there's opinions either way as to whether you should or should not use it. Personally, we don't need it, so I'm not going to use it. And especially with some languages, especially JSON and stuff like that, it can actually become a problem for you if you have the trailing comma. So I like to not use it, but it's entirely your opinion. Okay, so how do we use this data? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and open my index.html with live server so that we can get to the console. And let me just move around my screens So we'll inspect this and go to our console. And then I'll just bring this down so that we can see the console output here. Great, so what does an object look like when we print it to the console? So let's say console.log car. So if we save that now, you'll see that the console's nicely printed out on multiple lines, including giving us a drop down for our array data, all of the values that are inside our car object. Fantastic, that could be really handy. How do we access just a single element? Well, we can use something called dot notation. So if I just want to get the brand, for example, we could say console.log our car, and then dot, so we type the name of the variable that the object is in, dot, and then we simply need to just, what key do we want? So VS Code is actually suggesting all of these because it's looked inside here and says, well, I can see you've got a brand, you've got colors, you've got is manual, you've got top speed. So let's go with brand. So if I save this now, we get Ford. Fantastic, we've accessed one of those values using dot notation. There is something that I do want to show you though. There is actually another way that we can access all of these values on our objects. And this has kind of less uses and it's less commonly seen, but sometimes it's very useful. So we can actually, if we only know the string of our key, we can also access it that way. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say const the key equals, and then we'll say is manual. Okay, so this is a string. This is string data. So what we can say here is console.log, and then we'll say car. Now, if we tried to pass it the key here and save it, we'd get undefined because there is no key on here that is the key. This does not exist on our car object. So how do we do that? Well, what we can do is instead of using dot notation, we can use square brackets. So it's a little bit like, sometimes I say in my head, like, we're going to go for car at the index of, and that is wrong. That is wrong, but it's kind of the way that I remember to use the square brackets. So what we can do here is we can pass in the key, and if we save that now, I've just forgotten to make that uppercase. So if we save that now, we get car is manual, which is true. Brilliant, we've got true. So now let's go ahead and change this to top speed and save that. Yep, and we get 120. So this can be handy if you're, if you've got a list of keys that you want to kind of cycle through and get them that way. This will become far more practiced in the course to come. So don't worry if it doesn't make too much sense right now. I just want you to understand that these are two ways that you can access values on a object. Great, so how do we update some of this data? So let's say we want to now say that the top speed is 150. Well, it's quite easy. What we do is we say car.topSpeed, so we get the key that we want to access, and then we simply set it equal to our new value. So we'll say 150. So if I save that, okay, nothing's printed to the console, but if we console.log our car.topSpeed and save that, you'll see that it has now been updated to 150. Excellent. So let's now create a new key and value on our object. So what we can do here is we can just say car. So let's say that we want to record the number of seats. So if I say console.log here, car.numSeats, and save, you'll see that we get undefined because it doesn't exist on our object. But what we can do is we can say car.numSeats, like this, and then just set that equal to the data that we want to put in it. So let's say it has 5 seats. If we then go ahead now and say console.log numSeats and save that, I need to say car.numSeats, my apologies, and save that, we now get that 5. So you see, on line 20, car.numSeats didn't exist. We put it on our object using dot notation, and then we said log that out, and we get 5. So that's how we can add to our objects.